What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie The Fall Guy. Here's a quick synopsis. Months after an accident, stuntman Colt Seavers is brought onto a movie set to find its missing star, while also trying to rekindle his romance with the film's director, Jody Moreno. The film stars Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Winston Duke, Hannah Waddingham, Teresa Palmer, and Stephanie Hsu. Standout performances. Ryan Gosling has done the opposite of what most movie stars do, which is star in action movies and then make their way to dramas. And for as much as I like The Gray Man, I have to admit The Fall Guy is a better fit because he gets to be funny, which by now we all know he's great at. Colt Seavers is the perfect role for the movie star actor who is now fully embracing movie stardom. Whereas before he was playing brooding characters in The Place Beyond the Pines, now he's playing Ken in the Barbie movie. And here's what the actor told Vanity Fair about how he chooses his roles nowadays. Quote, "I don't really take roles that are going to put me in some kind of dark place. I want to make stuff that's inclusive, and that's not for an audience of one. I think for so long I was trying to pay the bills and work. It's only recently that I feel like I realized that I have this opportunity to actually make the kind of films that made me love movies." Gosling is next set to star in the sci-fi project Hail Mary, directed by Philip Lord and Chris Miller, and is set to re-team with Bobby co-star Margot Robbie in an Ocean's 11 movie. Gosling's co-star in The Fall Guy, Emily Blunt, has proven she can carry action movies, Sicario, Edge of Tomorrow, and Jungle Cruise, often overshadowing her male co-stars in the action department. In this movie, she's not asked to do a lot of action. She plays a director named Jody, and the movie is really asking her to be a movie star, which she's brilliant at. And I know this is a word that gets overused too much when it comes to movies, but the star of The Fall Guys, Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, have chemistry. It's undeniable. Blunt will next star in the A24 film The Smashing Machine with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's the first movie Benny Safdie will direct without his brother Josh. This is Aaron Taylor Johnson's second movie with David Leitch, the first being Bullet Train, and I feel like he gets the best out of the actor. In The Fall Guy, Taylor Johnson plays pompous movie star Tom Ryder, and yes, he was funny and kick-ass, but Leitch has helped bring his comedic abilities to another level. One thought I had while watching The Fall Guy: if Aaron Taylor Johnson truly is going to be the next James Bond, I believe that film's director should be David Leitch. Because think about it, when Daniel Craig was James Bond, they were super serious action movies. Well, guess what? They need a new tone, and they need to get back to being more comedic. And I believe Aaron Taylor Johnson could get the job done with David Leitch as his director, making a Bond movie. I want that to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's what should happen. Aaron Taylor Johnson has a big slate of upcoming movies: Kraven the Hunter from J.C. Chandor, Nosferatu from Robert Eggers, and 28 Years Later from Danny Boyle. I'm intrigued by Kraven the Hunter because I don't know what to expect from a Sony Spider-Man universe movie without Kevin Feige's involvement. I feel like they just don't know how to make a good superhero movie without Kevin Feige in the MCU. Overall, I do believe that Aaron Taylor Johnson has a real chance here to become a mega movie star, especially if he does become the next James Bond. I think he's far too famous to be James Bond, but I would definitely understand him taking the role because it's the role of a lifetime and he would become a much bigger actor than he is right now. I've just always personally admired the directors that he works with: Christopher Nolan, Tom Ford. Like, the guy picks the right filmmakers to work with. Since co-directing the first John Wick film and Atomic Blonde straight up action movies, director David Leitch, for better or worse, has gone down the path of action comedies. Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, Bullet Train, and now The Fall Guy. He makes really entertaining movies with big stars. So yes, I'm a fan, and his movies work best when the leads of them are game. And while watching The Fall Guy, you can tell Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt were having a good time making the movie. Yes, as I mentioned, I believe David Leitch should direct a James Bond movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson in the titular role. I also believe David Leitch is the type of director that the Marvel Universe or DC should be going after because of how good he is with action sequences. What do you hear all the time with every review of a superhero movie? The final battle was lame. The action scenes are lame. You wouldn't get that with a movie directed by David Leitch. I mean, say what you will about the quality of his films, but the action sequences are really fun. And more importantly, entertaining. You don't turn off when there's a fight scene in one of his movies. You watch because it's worth watching. One thing this movie has gotten a lot of credit with the reviews is I've heard a lot of people say that this film, The Fall Guy, is both an action movie and a romantic comedy. And I'm going to push back on that a bit. This is an action movie with romantic elements, but the two characters already have a relationship at the beginning of a movie. It's a cheat code and definitely the route the movie needed to take, but a major element of a romantic comedy is when two characters meet for the first time, and you don't get that in The Fall Guy. What you do get is a movie within a movie that is meta commentary on The Fall Guy. I also just think a lot of people are interested in stuntmen in general. They are mysterious figures in Hollywood that don't get a lot of credit. They are daredevils. Just look at how many people loved Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So here we are once again with a very good movie, and all people want to talk about is the film's lack of box office success. And here's where I'm interested in that. I don't care that this movie didn't make a lot of money or the money that people were expecting. What I'm curious is, why didn't the star power of the two actors attract audiences to see this movie? I mean, this is Ryan Gosling coming off of Barbie. You were all goo goo gaga for him at the Oscars when he was singing that song, and you won't even go see this movie. And Emily Blunt is coming off of Oppenheimer, her first ever Oscar nomination. These are two of the stars of the biggest movies of last year, and that didn't get people to go to the movies. That's concerning if you're like me, somebody who watches movies for movie stars, that movie stars can't attract people to go see their new movies. This tells me that success from past movies don't carry over anymore, and that's concerning. Because I believe if this was like 2010, the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer would carry over, and the next 5 Ryan Gosling movies would be hits because he was Ken in Barbie, and the same for Emily Blunt. Like, I think we're all just expecting the next Margot Robbie movie to be a massive hit because of Barbie, but now I'm starting to question that. The success of these movies do not roll over. Every movie is its own thing nowadays. And what that does is it makes it harder for you to develop into a movie star. Now, that's not a problem for Ryan Gosling or Emily Blunt. They're going to be viewed as movie stars till the ends of their careers. I'm more concerned about actors who star in billion-dollar movies. Like, does that not make you a star anymore? Being in the biggest movie in the world? I mean, that's what made Tom Cruise a big star, is hit after hit after hit after hit after Top Gun. Will Smith, after Independence Day, was in hit after hit after hit. That's how you become a movie star, because the success of one movie carries over to the next one. You need to see the next movie that stars Will Smith. You need to see the next movie that stars Tom Cruise. That seems to be gone. Like, it just doesn't register with people anymore that they needed to see the next Ryan Gosling movie or they needed to see the next Emily Blunt movie. And you can't say that these aren't two of the biggest movie stars in the world, because they are. And this isn't some dramatic film they're starring in. This is a movie that's made to be a hit. It's an action movie for everyone. It has some romance. It has a Taylor Swift song in it. They made this movie thinking that they had a massive hit on their hands. And I know people are blaming the fact that the movie is about to go on VOD 2 weeks into its release. I don't really care about all that. I don't think it impacts things whatsoever. The people that wanted to see The Fall Guy in movie theaters were going to see the movie The Fall Guy in theaters no matter what. And the people who didn't want to see the movie were never going to see the movie anyway. Maybe those people will rent it, but the same people that are renting it weren't going to go to the movies to see The Fall Guy. It wasn't going to make this movie a hit, being in movie theaters for the next 4 months. That was never going to happen. This is in 1975 when Jaws was in movie theaters forever. That doesn't happen with movies anymore. And even if it did for a movie like The Fall Guy, it would have never been viewed as a massive success because not enough people were interested. Maybe it's because people never had a history with the show The Fall Guy. I don't know the reasons. I personally just thought it was going to be a hit because Ryan Gosling was in it coming off of Barbie and because Emily Blunt was in it coming off of Oppenheimer. I thought the past movies of actors mattered to their upcoming films, and I no longer feel that way. Like, I can't bank on the fact that the next person who's in a billion-dollar movie, that means they're going to have hit after hit after hit movie. It doesn't seem like that's the way that things are going. And I think it's interesting in the case of Ryan Gosling because you can look at his career and you can go, wow, he's been in a few movies that didn't really have success. Blade Runner 2049 is a movie that a lot of people think and view as one of the best science fiction films of all time. That movie was not a hit at the time. The Nice Guys was not a hit movie, even though the entire internet wants there to be a sequel to that movie. But on the other hand, this is the guy who's been in La La Land. He's been in The Big Short. He's been in movies that people go and see. So I just don't understand why The Fall Guy has fallen hard at the box office. And Blunt, of course, has had her success outside of Oppenheimer. She's been in the Quiet Place films. She was in Mary Poppins Returns. It's just baffling because the reviews of The Fall Guy were really good and it's an action movie. Like, I just expect people to go to the movie theaters to see an action movie. And for whatever reason, they're not doing it. And I can't believe that the reason is because people just watch action movies at home now. Like, that can't be the reason. There's got to be a better one for why The Fall Guy didn't find success at the box office. I'm left wondering if Ryan Gosling is going to continue down this path of trying to be an action star because I'm not sure it's working. Yes, he's given 2 really good performances in my opinion in both The Gray Man and now in The Fall Guy, but it's not leading to massive success. He's never going to be viewed as an action star at this rate, and I just don't see that that's going to change anytime soon, and I'm not sure he wants to be viewed as an action star, but 2 of the last 3 movies have been action films. Maybe he just waited too long to star in action movies, but again, I just look at it and I go, he has never been more culturally relevant. We talked about him at the Oscars. He was nominated. He sang the song. He was Ken. He was in the biggest movie of the last year. What is going on, people? Why didn't you go see Ryan Gosling in The Fall Guy? I saw an interview with Ryan Gosling where he was talking with MTV's Josh Horowitz about the fact that he wants to play Ghost Rider. I think that would be a wild choice. That's like a B-level Marvel character, but I think we are definitely living in a world where I could see Ryan Gosling doing that because, like I said earlier, this is a guy who seems interested in being culturally relevant, being a movie star. He is fully embracing it. He's Ken. He's in The Fall Guy. He wants to do action movies. Maybe the best action movie to be in is a Marvel film where he gets to be Ghost Rider. I mean, how weird would that be? Nicolas Cage played Ghost Rider in 2 movies that no one talks about anymore. And now Ryan Gosling is publicly talking about the fact that that's the character he wants to play. That's the superhero he's landed on. My overall take on 2024 so far, it has been a rough year for action movies that I think are of high quality. I mean, you had Monkey Man. Monkey Man has made $35 million at the box office. That was a super well-made film starring a well-known actor in Dev Patel. Not a lot of people have seen it. Then you have The Fall Guy that has 2 megastars in it, Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Not a lot of people went and seen it. And now this weekend you have Furiosa, a movie that I will talk about on this podcast next week, and I really need this movie to be a hit. I want want this movie to be a hit, and it feels like this movie that I have not yet seen yet deserves to be a hit. I want really good action movies. I love the John Wick movies as much as the next guy, but there needs to be other action franchises that are born, and the way that you get those franchises made is you go and see action movies like Monkey Man, like The Fall Guy, and like Furiosa. I feel like the lack of success for these high-budget action films is going to lead to what they used to do, which is make a lot of action movies with B-level stars that don't cost a lot of money. I'm talking about The Beekeeper. The Beekeeper, a movie that I talked about on this podcast, cost $40 million. That movie made $152 million at the box office. The problem with The Fall Guy is that's a movie that cost $150 million and has just made barely under $103 million so far at the box office. Expensive movies are hard to be profitable nowadays. So what they're going to do is they're going to make movies like Roadhouse, that Jake Gyllenhaal thing. They just announced a sequel. Now that's a streaming movie, but that movie doesn't cost a boatload of money like The Fall Guy does, like Furiosa does. Now Monkey Man didn't cost that much money, but people still talk about that like it was a failure. It cost $10 million and made $35. Sounds decent to me. When I read the early reviews of this film, The Fall Guy, I just thought it was going to turn into an event movie. I thought it was going to turn into one of those movies that we were all going to talk about, that it was going to be a giant box office success, that it was going to be one of those movies that far exceeded expectations at the box office, that it was going to become another cultural moment for Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. All I know is that action movies used to be a place for movie stars to thrive. Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mel Gibson, you know the names. When those people were in action movies, you went to the movies immediately. Maybe this is due to the fact that Ryan Gosling doesn't have that extensive history of being an action star. Like, could you imagine, would this movie have done better if Mark Wahlberg was the star of it? And I don't mean it would have been better quality, because Ryan Gosling is a far better actor than Mark Wahlberg, and I love Mark Wahlberg. But would more people have seen this movie if it were Mark Wahlberg? Would it have been a bigger hit if Mark Wahlberg were the star of The Fall Guy? Because Mark Wahlberg has a history of being in these kinds of action movies. Another name that's interesting to imagine if he were the star of this movie, but I actually believe this, is Channing Tatum. Like, people go see Channing Tatum movies. He is a culturally relevant figure, especially in movies like this, because of his history with 21 Jump Street. His movie with Sandra Bullock, The Lost City, made $192 million at the box office. I mean, is it crazy to think that Channing Tatum is a bigger box office draw at this point than Ryan Gosling? These are the kind of thoughts I'm having after the lack of success for The Fall Guy. I guess my point is this: having Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt in this movie made this movie the best version of the film, but did it make it the biggest hit this film could have potentially been? I don't know the answer to that. Could it have been a bigger hit with Channing Tatum as the star? Could it have been a bigger hit with Mark Wahlberg as the star? I just find it so odd that this movie isn't going to make nearly as much money as David Leitch's last movie, Bullet Train, but I guess that just has to go back to Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is still Brad Pitt, and he's one of those actors that's grandfathered in. When there's a Brad Pitt movie out there, people go see a Brad Pitt movie. And maybe you can't say that about Emily Blunt anymore. Maybe you can't say that about Ryan Gosling, even though last year they were in two massive success stories. Each movie is a case-by-case basis for these two stars. Overall, I really like The Fall Guy, and I hope that people that didn't see it in movie theaters seek it out, because it is a really fun action movie with a lot of laughs. At the end of the day, I do feel kind of bad for Ryan Gosling, because he has these movies that people find after their release in movie theaters, and they become like these hidden gems, and you you wonder, why didn't people see The Nice Guys when it was in movie theaters? And now you're wondering, why didn't people see The Fall Guy? Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out The Fall Guy. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max story from George Miller, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.